What's going on, Vigilante World? It's your guy Spec Civilian, and we back with another video. First things first, I want to give a shout out to all my viewers, subscribers, and Patreon supporters for making this a home to catch some content before you make a purchase. In today's video, we're actually going to be giving you guys another episode of 75 Live. In today's episode, we're actually going to be diving into the specs and features of literally my favorite carry pistol on the earth. As of now, it's literally one of the best single action, double action guns that you can get. I already know what that is. That's gonna be the CZ75 P-01. Now, one thing that's really cool about the P-01 is that it has a couple variants. You have the P-01 and the P-01 Omega that just have a couple different things. And so I'm literally gonna be doing Battle of the Czech service pistol for you guys. So you can kind of see, if you are looking into a P-01, which one is literally more favored to you and how you can kind of make that decision. So let's get into it. All right, Vigilante World, let's get into which CZ75 P-01 you should get. Now, of course, you know what we have here is the CZ75 P-01 and then the CZ75 P-01 Omega. Now, a lot of people look for these two pistols for their first time purchase. Now, the main thing that's going to be the difference between these two pistols, honestly, is going to be the internal systems, which we'll get to. Main things I'll kind of go over real quick is just kind of everything, just so everybody can kind of get a full synopsis of the main differences between these guns. Of course, we'll start with your standard CZ. So here's your CZ75 P-01. Of course, you know at the top we have some Trijicon combat sights, but out of the box, you're not going to get these Trijicon combat sights, though you can replace them easily, just so you can have a very similar sighting setup. But out of the box, you're actually going to get a standard pair of kind of like 3-dot luminescent sights, which are not bad, but if you're going to kind of want a better sighting picture, by all means, you're going to want to change those. So that's something that's going to be super subjective between the person. Now, standardly, these do come in all black, like an all black poly coat. Now, you can get the MP3 finish if you like. That was just something personally that I did that I thought was nice. The thing is, as you can see, these sights are already a 3-dot night sight. So out of the box, being able to get something like this is super solid. So if you're gonna look at getting some sights out of the box without changing them, I would go for the Omega if you're looking at sight picture, because the regular P-01, you're gonna have to change the sights if you're gonna want something that's a little bit better, kind of like this, because this is already kind of a combat night setup to where you are to get all of the perks of the sights. So that can kind of weigh your options there. Now, moving on to kind of the slide. Now, the slides are gonna be, honestly, exactly the same. Both have locking blocks, the same striking systems, all that stuff is exactly the same, even the extractors. So that shouldn't have to be anything you have to worry about changing or anything like that, just kind of going forward. So that shouldn't have to be too much of a difference there. Just super simple, super easy. Once you get into the frames, that's where you get your biggest differences. On the actual P-01, of course, you know this one comes with a regular decocker. So if you drop that hammer, you can easily decock it. Now, if you get the P-01 Omega, this one actually comes with, sorry, let me drop the safety. This one actually comes with a decocker as well, but the decocker makes you push down forward rather than kind of push down with your thumb. It kind of makes you do a scoop motion rather than kind of like a pushing motion, which is not bad, but that's why I changed it. Now for this one, super easy safety. If you wanted to drop that hammer, you can easily drop the hammer still and still run it in double action if that's really what you wanted to do. So you don't have to worry about that. But not only that, you still get the actual abilities to go ahead and cock the hammer, run it cocked and locked, which is what I like about the Omega, that it still offers that at a very, very easily convertible gun. Honestly, the main things that are going to be, like I said, your differences is, again, this trigger, which we'll just show you real quick. If you're thinking about getting it for single action even, and you want to think about that reset, right here you have, boom. So that's your reset there. So not too bad at all, actually. But the thing is, on the Omega, reset so long. Reset so long. So it's a little bit of a longer reset whenever you're getting the Omega and stuff like that. But you gotta think about it again. This one's already been Cajunized. So if you're comparing, you know, a Cajun Gunworks job to kind of like the Omega job, then that's where you're gonna kind of see that difference. Though the reset of the original CZ75 P-01 Omega is going to be very similar to the P-01. Now, when it comes to the double actions, the double action on each trigger is going to be about the same, to be honest. The double actions are going to be about the same. The main things that are going to be different is the trigger styles. So of course, you know, with the traditional P-01, you get a traditional style trigger. Though this one is a Cajun Gunworks old style trigger, which is still very similar, except for the factory trigger has a little bit more of a hook at the end, as to where this one kind of gets a little bit straighter as you get towards the middle of it, or towards the end of the trigger rather. Now when it comes to that double action pull, super easy, super nice. Though this has been Cajunized, so it's going to be a little bit better than your average factory pull. I believe the factory pull was about 10 pounds, which was a little gritty. So once you got to about here, it would stick, and then you would actually, you know, be able to break the trigger. This one right here, you can actually glide through, which is what I like about it. Not only that, if you were to drop this thing into single action, super nice. So super nice whenever it comes to the single action and the double action. So super easy whenever it comes to something like this. Even if you are in single action, like I said, you can always drop it with the decocker, and that's the main thing that's going to be your differences between the two. Now when you get over to the Omega, like I said, you can easily use that double action there, but you're gonna have a little bit more grit. Though the trigger is a little bit better because this is a flat trigger, flat Omega trigger, rather than having that old style trigger. So yes, it still has a little bit of a hook at the end, or a little bit of curve at the end, but the main surface of the trigger is actually very flat, to where once you're in this single action mode, you actually get a very solid single action trigger. Again, with the P-01 super original gun, you're not really missing anything that's going to be a difference, because on the front of each one, you're still going to be able to see they get the same exact serrations. On the back of each one, they get the same exact serrations. They both have palm swell grips. I actually changed these ones to thin grips, so that's something you're going to get. So you're not really missing anything out of that. Out of the box for your originals, though, they're only going to come with 14 round magazines, as to where on the Omegas, you're gonna get 15 round magazines. So that might be something that might steer you towards the Omega. You get one extra round for that, but also with the one round, you got to understand it's going to be a little bit more expensive as well. So that's something that you kind of have to weigh on your part. Outside of just having that mag difference right there, of course, you know, this one has the rubber bottom, and these ones have the Met Guard bottom, though the original P-01 Omegas had the rubber bottoms as well. So if you do run into that, that just means it was one of the more traditional models. Now, outside of that, they both come with a skeletonized hammer, though the original hammer that this one has is not this racer hammer. It's actually a rounded hammer for, you know, snag purposes and stuff like that. People want to be able to carry it, be able to pull it from their holster without snagging. Though this is this hammer here has no problems. On the actual Omega, you automatically get the factory Omega hammer. So that's kind of like the CZ's little race hammer that they give you. So super easy, super nice. You don't have to worry about changing that or nothing like that. So that might be something that you want to look into just because of that. But yeah, again, super nice because you do get that out of the box. Like I said, your biggest difference is going to be the internals. The internals on the P-01 are much harder to deal with and modify than the P-01 Omega. Mainly because the Omega system has an easy convertible system and an easy breakdown system, as to where the original system was not about finding kind of like that convenience for the trigger and the safety and stuff like that. It was about just kind of creating reliability within the firearm for it to run at its best, period. So that's where you're going to be kind of seeing those differences there. So real quick, I'll kind of break these apart so I can kind of show you the difference, and then after that we'll get off the mat and we'll talk about it a bit. All right, so here we have both of the frames. And so as you can see, exactly identical, but they're really not. So as you can see, if you look inside, you can see this trigger bar in here. It's totally different trigger system than this Omega trigger system. So this trigger bar has two sides, as to where this trigger bar has only one side, which is, again, super easy for this. So you can actually get this changed out if you need to. Just creates a much more convenient system, again, for the gun buyer. For the original one, you have this original sear, you have the sear spring, you got the decocker spring, you got this other retaining pin here for the reach reduction kit, and it's just a much more complicated and meticulous piece of work just within the sear, as to where whenever you're looking at that Omega, That just looks easier, doesn't it? Rather than having all these extra springs and stuff here, all you have to do is worry about your roll pin, your regular kind of extractor and stuff like that. Nothing crazy though. That's my main thing, is that regardless, this is the simplest setup for this type of frame, as to where this is a much more complex setup in the frame. So if you're looking at breaking this down and doing a little bit more to this, that's why you'd want to go for that opposed to this. And again, like I said, they're very similar, but those are going to be the main differences there. So I'm gonna snap these back together, and then we're gonna go over everything. So yeah, so those are gonna be the main differences between your CZ75 P-01 standard and your CZ75 P-01 Omega. And so if you're making a decision between the two, that's gonna be where your main differences lie. So let's get off the mat, talk about it a little bit. Back to it. So as you've seen, these are two really great pistols. I mean, literally, they're just twin pistols, pretty much exactly the same stuff. They just slightly differ on the internals, and that's what really makes the biggest difference there. If you are someone who likes a more meticulous gun that you can kind of play with, then you might be leaning more towards that original pistol. But if you are wanting something that's just easier to maintain, you might be leaning more towards that Omega. It just depends on literally what you're looking for. But you also might be a person that might be leaning towards a flat trigger, or you might be a person that wants more of like a Shadow 2-esque trigger. If that's the case, you might be leaning either way. One thing that's really cool about both pistols is that honestly, you can turn either one into exactly what you want. I mean, at the end of the day, you can swap out the sights on either one. As you've seen on my P-01, I changed those from the regular stock sights to some Trijicon night sights. Easy fix. You don't really have to worry about stressing over that. If you want something that's a little bit more aesthetic, you can do all the things that you want to the slide. As far as slide cuts, I mean, you have a couple companies that you can go through for something like that. If you want it to be more aesthetically pleasing, that's totally up to you. That's, again, a subjective thing, but you can do that. They're the exact same size, barrel length and stuff like that, so you're not losing anything or gaining anything right there. I know on some of the original ones, the barrel's a little bit longer, maybe like a mil or two longer. On the newer Omegas, they were a little bit more flush. And so that's one of the things that I noticed whenever I first got the pistol, but again, it's not making a big difference here or there. Both still come with polymer guide rods that you still have to change. Same exact thing there. Now, when it comes to mag capacity, the fact that you do get that extra round in the P-01 Omega is cool to start off with, but since they're interchangeable mags and stuff like that, you can easily use a 15-round Metguard mag on the traditional P-01 if that's something that you want to do, just to make it easier for you to not have to worry about the mag capacity or just losing one round. Now, playing with the decockers and stuff like that, as you've seen, the decocker on the traditional one is just more of that tactical style decocker where you kind of push your thumb forward, and on the Omega, it's more of a swoop down. And that's why I have the safety on that one. The fact that you can have an option for a safety or a decocker on the Omega is one reason that I really like the Omega, and the fact that they made the internals so much more maintainable for something like that, because if people are going to want to convert their system, it shouldn't be something that's very difficult or complicated for them to honestly just make that switch. It should be something that you could literally field strip your gun and make the easy swap if that's something that you needed to do for whatever situation. Now, at the end of the day, you're gonna get really the same frame materials, aluminum frame. I know some of the traditional P-01s had a steel frame if you could find it, but I never found one myself. But at the end of the day, I know they do still have one out there. For the Omegas, they are going to be an aluminum frame, but it is very light. I know a lot of companies are dropping an aluminum frame pistol now, and that's one thing that's cool about the CZ-P-01. It's been out. It's one of the most original OG aluminum frame pistols that you could get and still tune and still have a bunch of aftermarket parts where you can literally make it as flashy as you want. So that's one thing that I think is to be respected about the CZ-P-01 in general, but both of these variants give you those options to really make those modifications. So again, that's one of the best thing about either one of these P-01s. Now, we're still talking about a CZ, so at the end of the day, you still get those internal slide rails, and that's one of the coolest thing. At the end of the day, you get a really good purchase on the gun. Got those internal slide rails that aids in that lower bore axis, so you can just have a little bit of a crispier shot. But also, whenever you're talking about recoil reduction, it actually helps aid in a little bit of that, because at the end of the day, since you're a little bit higher up on the gun, you're not worried about as much flippiness. Whenever the slide is reciprocating, it's more so stroking straight back than flipping the gun up. So that's one thing that's actually really cool for both of these guns, is that at the end of the day, you know for a fact you're going to have a solid set of recoil mitigation and just the traditional setup and build of the gun. Now, you can do all of the things to change the performance of the gun. Again, like changing out your guide rod just to add a little bit more weight up front. You can add the different grip panels. I know on mine, as you've seen, I got the aluminum grips on one and then I have the stock on another, but I also am a big fan of lock grips. So there will be lock grips on my pistols, or at least one of the two here in the near future. On top of that, what's really cool is that, again, when you're talking about performance, you can easily change out all of the springs and tune everything exactly how you need for both pistols. So when it comes to overall accuracy and reliability of these guns, it all depends on, you know, who the shooter is, because out the box, as far as reliability and accuracy, is going to be exactly the same, to be honest with you. I know the traditional ones, again, are like NATO spec and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, both of them have been tested to make sure that they can be great service pistols, and that's exactly why both of these models are popular today. At the end of the day, the best part about the P-01 is that all of the perks and stuff that you get coming out of a very, very fair cost. For either one, you're going to be looking at a solid $600, $700. Typically, they're about a $580 to about a $680 MSRP, depending on which model you're looking for. But if you can find it, definitely, since the P-01 Omegas have been discontinued, if you can find them, it is solid to go ahead and get one, just because, again, all the options that you have to really just make it exactly what you want are still on the table. But if you can find a regular P-01, that one's solid as well. Now, CZ does have a couple of other offerings that aren't exactly these, but they're still compact models. They just don't have the accessory rail, like the PCR or the Compact D. Those are both pretty much the P-01s with no accessory rail. So that's the main thing that's gonna kind of be there. If you want to go for those models, those are just as good. You're just not going to be able to play with the lights. But at the end of the day, you can tune them to be as fast as you want or to be as smooth as you want, just like you can do these. So just keep that in mind whenever you're thinking about a CZ P-01, is that at the end of the day, this is the compact variant of their P line of pistols. So there is a couple other models that are brothers to the P-01 if you decided to go that route. But if you did like this video, make sure you smash that like button. If you have any other comments, make sure you drop those right down below. I'd love to hear about what you guys think about the CZ75 P-01 and which model that you would get or which model that you're leaning towards. Definitely make sure you smash that subscribe button. I got mad more content coming for y'all soon. Other than that, all I gotta say is stay safe, get some ammo. Till next time, y'all.